Hello, my name's Florence. Welcome to the theobspod. I'm an NHS obstetrician, hoping to share some thoughts and experiences about my working life. Perhaps you enjoy Call the Midwife, maybe birth fascinates you, or you're simply curious about what exactly an obstetrician is. You might be pregnant and preparing for birth. Perhaps you work in maternity and want to know what makes your obstetric colleagues tick, or you want some fresh ideas and inspiration. Whichever of these is the case, and for that matter, anyone else that's interested, the theobspod is for you. Episode 57, Upright Birth. Fantastic. So today is a bit of departure for the theobspod. I have my first ever guest, and we're going to have a bit of a conversation about upright birth today with Deepa. Deepa, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Flo. I'm really excited to be your first guest. Such an honor. I've always followed the theobspod right from the beginning. I love it. I keep telling everybody about it, even in India.
Oh, thank you.
My favorite part is the zesty bit.
Yeah,
because it gives you something to take away with. My journey actually started in... I had my children in 2002, 2004, and my obstetrician in India was the kindest soul. She's so compassionate, and my birth story is quite different from everyone else in terms of the support I received.
Okay.
So she pointed me towards, I want to be a bridge between families and the doctor system that is there in India. So that's how I became a birth educator in 2009, and I was the first doula in my city. It's Chennai now, it was called Madras, so it's the south part of India, and I did a lot of birth advocacy work then.
Wow. Yeah,
and then I moved in 2011 to London. And I'm very grateful to the NHS. Straight away, we're very appreciative of whatever I came with. And I started off in a community breastfeeding team. And then in 2014, I went on to become a project lead for the Baby Friendly Project.
Right.
Now I'm a student midwife. So I decided to take the plunge in 2020. I discovered midwifery here. And I always wanted to be one for the last 7 years, and 2020 I decided to do it.
That's fantastic. That's such an amazing journey, actually. That's really inspiring. Because am I right in thinking there's less of a midwifery model in India?
Yeah, it's obstetric-led mostly.
Yeah.
Midwives there are more traditional midwives, or someone who's done nursing, and they probably had maybe 6 months exposure, but it was very interventionistic, and that's the system that is there. So you don't have any midwifery in terms of what actual midwifery is, and also there is still no direct entry program. So you would still have to become a nurse to become a midwife.
Yeah. Okay. So that's quite different.
Yep.
Fantastic. So you're on your journey now, but we're going to talk a little bit about something you did before you started your student midwifery. Tell me a little bit about your project and what you were hoping to achieve.
Yes. So this started off because... my manager, Christine Wood, she was amazing. She always wanted me to do something for my personal goal, and I think every manager should be like that. And that's how I ended up picking QI, quality improvement. So the UCL partners in London, they were running a program. I interviewed for it and I got selected. It was called the Aspiring Improvers Program. And so in that program, you have to choose a project in which you want to see improvement. And straight away for me, the first thing in my head was, how can we increase women giving birth in more upright positions? Because that's what they wanted. So I would be involved with the Maternity Voices Partnership as well, where I was working. And we were always talking about why is there so much lithotomy, or why are, women and birthing people always on the bed, why we're not doing anything different, which is what, we're meant to be doing. So the project sponsor was the head of midwifery, and that's how it all started, to say that there was kind of a unified goal among the organization and what I wanted to do. And that's how the whole thing kind of kickstarted, because of QI.
Excellent. Okay. And I remember you contacting me. I don't remember how long ago it was, but tell me, how did you kind of come across me or the lithotomy challenge?
I think I was following MatExp, and of course, I'm trying to research and trying to find out, more about why lithotomy, and, what are the rates and what's happening around the country. And as soon as you Google lithotomy, I think you pop up there.
Probably a picture of me with my legs akimbo. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. With the legs up there, in the hospital gown lying there. And then, and I read your whole blog about, how you actually picked it up from the ice bucket challenge.
Yes.
And you actually stayed for 1 hour in that position, and how you had so many different people coming into the room, including, I think, your CEO.
Yes, that's right.
And how your head of MVP, who is also a doula, she was the first person to give you a massage on your legs and say...
That's right.
Yeah. So, that is something that as soon as I saw it, I said, we have to do this. So, because it's so important for anybody who's taking care of a woman to actually understand where she's coming from. And that's the whole thing behind MatExp, and where, whose shoes as well. I also think I saw Professor Jim Thornton as well trying that position.
That's true, because basically I was talking about doing it for NHS Change Day, and I think he must have seen it on Twitter, and he jumped the gun and he posted a picture of himself saying something like, I really don't recommend this, really uncomfortable, really undignified. And I was absolutely thrilled that just by having the conversation on Twitter and saying what I was planning to do, I'd already sparked off other obstetricians thinking about it. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's how I sold it. I said, this famous obstetrician in Kingston, she's doing it, and Professor Jim Thornton's doing it. Come on, we need to try. And I kind of sold it like that for it to be accepted. But I think that actually kickstarted the change. I mean, we did a baseline audit, and we found out that about 30% of women were giving birth in the lithotomy position, and about, another 25% probably in the semi-reclined. So, right. and then we decided to actually choose the lithotomy challenge, as you called it. And in fact, I copied your picture, the way you had drawn it as a cartoon, and I put it up on all the boards. And here I am. I'm not a midwife. I'm a baby-friendly project lead, and I walk into the obstetrician's office and I just put up a poster like that. and everybody's looking at me and thinking, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
But when they did it, it made a real difference.
Yeah. And did you get lots of people taking part?
Yeah, we had a few registrars, we had our SHOs, and our consultants kind of, said, let's do this. I don't think any of them actually did that, but they actually got their registrars and SHOs.
Of course. They hang back,
Yeah. They were having a laugh, but the thing about the lithotomy challenges, as much as we're learning from it, it's also something fun to do. It's not a serious kind of sat in a classroom and us telling somebody who's there in the field to say, look, this is how it feels. But for them to actually do it changes, isn't it, when a doctor wears a hospital gown?
Yeah, I found it was really quite uncomfortable. It wasn't soft. It was quite kind of scratchy. And the thing I remember feeling about the lithotomy poles was that they were really cold, actually. And obviously I was wearing clothes, whereas women are often pretty much naked when they're birthing their babies. But I noticed how cold the things I had my legs in were, which I hadn't expected. I think for me, that's that thing of, you think you can imagine yourself in that position and what it's going to feel like. But when you actually do it, you realise, oh, actually, it's quite different to what I expected. And I've done it with some student midwives not that long ago. And again, as soon as they got into that position, they were, wow, I didn't really appreciate how it feels. So I think there is something unexpected about actually participating and doing it yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, even the dignity part of it, even though you're still wearing your trousers, like you said, women are not. As soon as your legs go apart like that on those poles, you lose complete control of what, a little bit of dignity that you can hold on to.
Yes, and I remember co-opting our consultant midwife to help me get in and out of that position, because you can't actually put yourself in lithotomy, and therefore equally you're stranded there until someone takes you out of it. Particularly as we tend to take off the end of the bed. So actually, if you bring your legs down, you're actually going to be really unsafe and potentially fall. So there's definitely a power dynamic there about you're not in control. You're quite vulnerable.
Yeah. We put up a few A3 posters, and we actually asked the doctors to write how they felt. And then what were they thinking about it, and actually how would they act, and to actually make a difference. So they did write, they said they felt vulnerable. They felt, when they got into that role, they felt quite powerless, out of control, tired even for the duration that they were there. And they began thinking, how long do women be in these positions, and why do we put them in those positions? And they discovered a few things like maybe it's a prolonged second stage, or a mother who's not able to push well, and somehow the lithotomy seems to be an answer to that, whereas it's actually counterproductive, as we can see with physiology. And sometimes it's also like getting her ready for the doctor. So all of these things came out, and they actually did say that they were going to actually act differently. And we also put it out in our mandatory training. So as part of the normality session that we were doing, the consultant midwife, Felipe and Rosie Dorman, so they were my project team and my subject matter experts, and they also did those sessions in the mandatory training as well.
Oh, that's a really good idea, because otherwise you kind of involve all the people that are interested, but you don't get the kind of naysayers and the people that are a bit less interested. So that's a really great idea. Yeah. I think you were saying to me that there were quite a lot of challenges doing your project, and, that you kind of managed it because you kind of expected that. Do you want to say a bit more about those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, in any, whether it's an improvement project or a change management project, like I was managing the baby-friendly project, so I was quite well versed with resistance to change. But for any project, you'll find, like, we were taught in QY that you would have innovators, like people who jump at the idea and who completely, want to stand by your side and who see the benefit of it. And then you have your early adopters who are like, they want to try it, and they can also kind of give you ideas and how to, get this going. And then the general, number of people will join in eventually because other people are doing it. But you will always find some resistors, and it's important, very, very important to expect it and know that can happen, because if you don't, then it can actually crush you. It can actually take you back, and you might say, why am I doing all of this? At what cost? But it's important to know that there will be resistance. You will find people who sometimes they can even attack you, attack you personally. They could attack the idea and things like that. It's important to see where they stand in the project. If it is somebody who you really want to be part of the project, then it might be worthwhile having a conversation with them one-to-one to find out why they have the resistance. And sometimes you can turn them around. They can be your biggest supporters.
Yes.
Yeah. Other times you just have to, either ignore them or at some point come together and say, look, this is what the project is and this is why we're going ahead. And hopefully the project sponsor and the other people who stood by you will have your back.
Yeah. Excellent. And so how long did your project go on for?
I think we started in December 2019 or maybe January 2020, somewhere around that. No, probably 2018. Sorry, I'm just going back in time, isn't it? We are, we're in 2021.
It's like we've lost a year, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. Wow. Right. Okay. So, so it started in January 2019.
Yeah.
And I think by the time we kind of decided how we were going to do all of this, it was about February, March. Yeah. And we just about managed to finish it, see the improvement, see the change, and got our results in about March 2020. And then the pandemic hit us. So, yes.
Which just made life a lot more difficult, hasn't it? So you mentioned you kind of saw your results. What sort of impact did it have? Your project?
So with QI, we kept on monitoring what our upright birth positions are. And we also included lateral position as an upright position because, some researchers tend not to do that. Others tend to do that. For us, it was more of a sacrum-free position, and we felt the left lateral could be included in it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we started off with about 25% of women actually giving birth in those positions. By the time we finished, I think we came up to about 60% of women actually giving birth in upright positions. Yeah.
Really big change.
It is, and we did a lot of other things. So we, for staff engagement, we did a poster. So I know we have plenty of posters, but none of it that shows real people doing these positions. And my idea to get staff involved was to get them act as models. And that got them really enthusiastic. I just used my smartphone and got the ideas from them on what different positions. So we had lots of kneeling and all fours and, standing. And also, even if, you've got an IV line, or if you have an epidural, or if you have to have continuous monitoring, we took pictures like that as well. So despite all of that, he could still actually try a position that could help gravity.
Yeah, so, that's really important, because I remember when I did mine, I did attach myself to the CTG so that I would have the wires. Because thinking about position, if you've got CTG wires, maybe a drip stand, possibly a catheter, all those other things that impact on how easy it is or not for the woman to move. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, because on delivery suite, you're going to find maximum people, attached to something or the other. Yeah. And we wanted to show that it's actually quite possible. So we actually used staff as models, and we created a really good poster which showed different positions during labor and also live birth positions. And that was a big hit in terms of staff enthusiasm. And also women at that point, we were still having them come in to have the birth tours and things like that of the maternity unit. Yeah. And as soon as they saw the poster, women were quite interested, and they were like, oh, wow, do you support this? Or I would like to try it.
Yes. Yeah. I think certainly in my experience, getting pregnant women to drive the change is really good. So I feel a little bit subversive, but sometimes women in my clinic will ask me things and I'll say, yes, you can definitely do that. And then I'll say to them, if someone tells you on the day that you can't, you tell them Florence said I could. So because if the woman asks, then the staff have to start thinking about it, don't they?
Absolutely.
For things like skin to skin in theatre, which we now do pretty routinely, which a few years ago we didn't. Yeah. I've definitely kept saying to women in clinic, you can do this. Even if you're in theatre, you can do this. So, coming from the women, that's great. Did you collect any feedback from women about before or afterwards the kind of impact on their birth experience?
We did do before, actually, because the MVP was involved.
Yeah.
And this was one of their priorities that they set up for the year. So we did collect feedback before, but we could not do after.
Yeah.
Because of the whole situation. And also I was the only person who, apart from my main role, I was doing all of these audits and other things. Yeah. So I actually could not get to the point. But the project, I think, still continues. Although I've left, keep in touch regularly. And the project is actually continuing. And I think sustaining that improvement is really important, and that can be quite challenging.
Yeah, I think that's really good because, we see this, people come and do a project and then it's all really great and then it kind of dies off again after the project's ended or after that person that's driving it has left. So that's really great if you're keeping in touch and hearing that they're still kind of embedding that change and working with it. Because I think you're right. Yeah. Sustaining the change is it's really difficult, isn't it?
Towards that, what we did was we realized that although, midwives and doctors did want to support it, they did not know how.
Okay.
So we actually got a trainer for it's called Biomechanics for Birth to talk about, Molly O'Brien to talk about actually a workshop. And a registrar once told me quite honestly, she said, if you left me in a room with a mother in, maybe on her knees or all fours, I wouldn't know what to do. I would panic. So, because all her training, she's never seen anything like that.
Yes.
So that hit so then we thought, okay, we need to really do something about, staff being comfortable in actually supporting that. It's all well and good if we know it's beneficial, but how are they going to do it and how do we support them? So we did bring the training, and I think it was the last face-to-face training that we ever did. And
probably. Yes.
It was fantastic. It had an immediate impact. And I had an obstetric consultant in the training as well, and who was trying all the different positions. And I think that again made that sustainability issue a bit more manageable there, because at least they have that training and they can impart it to their colleagues.
Yeah, I think that's essential, because I think you make a very good point. If you've done your training and you always work on labour ward and you always see birth and lithotomy, then it blows your mind. You can't manage to think. It's a bit like with breech birth. I've had to completely reimagine breech birth with physiological breech, because everything is upside down to the way I was originally trained to do it, and it takes a bit of mental adjustment. So I think that's essential, isn't it, for people to feel comfortable and confident in doing something different.
Absolutely.
So talking about training, because you've sent some lovely tweets about some of your birth experiences in your midwifery training that you're doing now, and you seem quite positive about where you're training, that there is quite a lot of upright birth and not birth in lithotomy. And I found that interesting, because I worry. Sometimes I know people enter midwifery and have all sorts of brilliant ideas, and then they gradually get a little bit disillusioned and kind of ground down. But you're finding it that you can still have impact and kind of encourage upright birth.
I'm quite a novice. I only spent 4 weeks in delivery suite. But in that experience, so I facilitated 6 births, and out of the 6, 2 were all fours kneeling, and the others were left lateral. So I think my second one was kneeling, so I had to immediately imagine the upside down. Of course,
Yeah.
my midwife is the person leading it, but
Yeah.
I was so impressed to see that. And my experiences have been that they do try their best. So in delivery suite there, they have the ball is there in the room. Now that's again a different change, because how you lay your birthing room is again really important, because you find that birth centers are the places which have these beautiful lights and the candles and the ball and everything, where the delivery suite tends to be very clinical.
Yes.
But here they've made it in a way that the birthing balls are there, the cushion mats are there, aromatherapy is available, and they make it as far as possible dim lit as well.
Yes.
So trying as best as possible in delivery suite to provide the same kind of experience that will promote oxytocin. I think that's what I have seen, and I'm quite impressed with it and really happy about it.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I do agree that otherwise you end up with, you walk into the room and the first thing you see is the bed, and then inevitably you end up on the bed. Yeah, I think I've said before, I spend quite a lot of time trying to get women out of bed, so much so that sometimes on the ward round, I'm like, why don't you use the birthing ball? And they go, I've literally just got into bed. I've been bouncing on that ball like all night. I'm exhausted. So yeah, I think you're right. How you lay out the room and what you have in the room also, again, influences women and staff into what happens next, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think as professionals, we need to lead that, because when a woman comes into a room, it's our space, which becomes her space. But it's so important to start it off right.
Yeah, totally. So if we're thinking a bit about, hopefully people that are listening to this might be thinking about how they might do their own improvement project or their own lithotomy challenge, or kind of think about how they raise awareness in their place of work. Have you got any tips for them?
Yeah, I think first thing that you want to find out that there is actually an issue, maybe start off with an audit to actually, and when the numbers are, when they pop up, it makes a big difference. So you might think, oh, I'm seeing a lot of, lithotomy, but when you actually put it in figures and you actually see the data, then it kind of becomes quite clear that there needs to be something done about that. Involving your maternity voices partnership, the voices of the people giving birth is really, really important. Like you said, they drive the change. Yeah. And when it comes from them, it's really powerful. And also find people who believe in the project, who will stand by your side, whatever obstacles that you face. So the project sponsor and your project team, you really want them to imbibe the idea, and they should be sold on it, and that's really, really important.
Yeah, that sounds like really good advice. Start with a bit of data, because that kind of then compels people to see the need for the change rather than just change for change's sake. Yeah, that's really good. So obviously you're doing your midwifery training. Are there things that you think, this is what I'm going to tackle next? This is the next sort of challenge, or not at the moment?
I've been blown away by the biomechanics part of birth.
Yeah.
Spinning babies and all of that I have read, and I belong to the group where we can actually see people, doing that. There's different very small changes. I think maybe towards my third year, I might probably want to do my dissertation towards that. I want to know more about how, because when labor slows down, we instantly move on to, say, syntocin, or, you may move on to all of the other interventions, which have their own, risks and side effects that come with it. but actually, can we do something that is not, carrying that many risks, but that makes an impact? And does it make an impact on that? So is there a midpoint that we can actually try before we reach for the drugs and other things? So that's probably where I'm heading.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, and we're doing quite a bit of that at my work. We've had an outbreak of peanut balls across the labour ward. One of the midwives told me to follow, you probably follow them, Mama Stay on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And they do the most amazing videos of what happens to your pelvis with different positions of your legs and how the baby descends through that. That's just, I think having a much more detailed understanding of the physiology and anatomy, we could do a lot better, couldn't we, than just here's a drip or here's a, instrumental birth, assisted birth. I think you're right. That's the future. Oh, well, I look forward to following your project on that at some point. Excellent.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think that we've pretty much covered everything that I was thinking that we should talk about. Is there anything else you think we've missed?
Maybe about the cost. A project like this actually doesn't cost much at all. So when we started, the lithotomy challenge is priceless, but it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
When we made the posters, I used my smartphone. I designed it on Microsoft Publisher. You can use Canva or Publisher and design it. And we printed it for like £11 per poster. We made like a nice A1 poster that probably cost us like £400. And then the training for the biomechanics for birth. So, all of this is actually quite minimal considering the benefits. And we actually had the Trust charity who were very happy to sponsor us for that. So in terms of cost, sometimes the projects can be put away because you might think, this is we can't afford it. We in the NHS, we're always talking about cost savings, but actually something like this doesn't cost that much at all. So it's actually quite doable.
I think that's a really good point because, funding is so limited and so tight. And so, the fact that actually you can do this quite cheaply and doesn't cost much at all. I think that's a really good point. Thank you very much. Well, Deepa, it's been an absolute joy to talk to you about your Upright Birth project and have you as my first guest. I look forward to hearing more in the future, but I definitely recommend people follow you on Twitter because just your excited tweets about dancing around the birth room, they always cheer me up. It's so lovely. You're so positive. You're such a energetic, positive force for good. So thank you very much. It's been
absolutely
really lovely
my
to
pleasure.
Talk to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely my pleasure. And I'm going to be shouting about this on the top of the world. That was your first guest.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and thank you, Flo. Bye.
Now for Deepa's favourite, the zesty bit. I really wanted to interview Deepa because I was hoping she'd inspire you to take some of the things I discuss in my zesty bits and run with it. And for me, she epitomises this absorbing stuff and taking it, embracing it and flourishing with new ideas, taking it further than I could have imagined and really taking it and running away with the idea. The zesty bit, therefore, today is to think about, in your role, whatever role you play, or as a pregnant woman, what can you do? What can you take from the zesty bits of my podcast that might help improve birth, whether that's birth for you, whether that's birth for people you care for, people in your family, people you work with. What can you take from the zesty bit and run with and be inspired by? And if this has made you think back about the lithotomy challenge, go back and listen to episode 21, the lithotomy challenge, and see where that inspiration might take you now that you've heard where it took Deepa on her journey. I do hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode of the theobspod. Feel free to contact me on Twitter at FWmaternity or at theobspod to ask me questions, give me topics for future episodes, or let me know what you think. It's absolutely fantastic when you get in touch. I really enjoy reading your comments. As usual, I've tried to include in the programme notes some extra reading about this particular topic, both for professionals working in maternity care and for pregnant women using services. I'd like to reassure you that although I'm talking about my experiences working in maternity care, I take confidentiality very seriously and do not give any personal information about any of my patients. If you've enjoyed listening, I'd love you to recommend the theobspod to friends or colleagues, and please do leave me a review on whichever podcast directory you find my episodes. Many thanks for listening.